Attorney, it's Ask Us Anything. Call 256-536-0077. Now you can call that number or you can text that number and we'll still get your question. With me here, it's Ask Us Anything, but it's William Meservey of Timberlake, League and Brooks. So my favorite, Eagle Scout lawyer. If you can't trust an Eagle Scout lawyer, what can you do?
Right. Yeah, and it's funny because now I'm in the throes of it with my boys.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My oldest Henry is just crossed over into Boy Scouts. My youngest Charlie's still in Cub Scouts. So we're still pretty involved, but it's fun.
I barely got through Cub Scouts, so I have to admire. So they can ask us anything tonight.
They can.
So do you have anything on your mind? Anything you really want to talk about?
I don't know if there's anything burning a hole that I want to talk about, but spent most of my week in the delves of workers' compensation. And, Alabama workers are the salt of the earth,
yeah.
But unfortunately the law has not kept up in order to properly compensate them for when they're injured. So, when you get injured on the job, it's different than getting injured in any other way. When you get injured in any other way, whether it be a car accident or a premises liability, even medical malpractice, we follow what's called common law. What have judges done in the past, yeah. Right? And but workers' comp is a statutory scheme. It's codified law down in Montgomery. And it's really a compromise, and it goes back to the Industrial Revolution, but you had all these people coming off farms to work in factories. There was no OSHA. People would get, kind of hurt, killed, and maimed left and right, unfortunately. And if they could prove it was the company's fault under the common law theory of negligence, failure to provide a safe work environment, then their families would get these big settlements and they'd be okay. But the vast majority of folks could not prove it was the company's fault. And so eventually labor and management came together and developed what is the workers' comp scheme, and it is a compromise, right? So the compromise is if you're injured on the job, regardless of who's at fault, you're going to be receiving some basic benefits. Medical treatment for life as it relates to that particular injury. 2/3 your average weekly wage for the time that your doctor has you pulled out of work. And if you have a permanent injury, you're entitled to some compensation for your permanent partial or permanent total disability at the end of it all. But the last time Alabama's laws were updated were in 1984.
Whoa.
And so one of the multipliers that we used is this multiplier of $220. Well, in 1984, $220 was the average median household income for the state of Alabama. But there's been no adjustment to it for cost of living or inflation. So in many ways, your injury is worth the same thing in 2026 that it was worth back in 1984, even though the dollar's not worth the same.
Well, if you have questions on that, you can give us a call tonight. We have a video we want you to comment on. Here, you make the law call. Now watch this guy. He's going to step over. It looks solid, but it's not. He's in the sledge. Ugh. So here's my question to you. Can he get any money for the company because they had a barrier?
Yeah, so, let's assume he's on the job, right? And that he's in his own premises where his company is. There are some exceptions to the Workers' Comp Act, and one of them is a safety violation or going around a safety implementation, right? And so if the workers' comp carrier will argue that rail was a safety device and that he bypassed the safety device, that could impact his ability to get workers' compensation benefits.
So he gets nothing?
Well,
possibly, conceivably.
Conceivably, though they may still owe him medical treatment. But if that was not deemed to be a safety device, then yeah, he would be entitled to workers' comp. And so workers' comp, you get regardless of whether or not you're at fault, your employer's at fault, someone else is at fault. But there are some exceptions to it: horseplay, intoxication, failure to adhere to a safety rule, or So, for example, if you're a truck driver and you didn't have your seatbelt on, you're going to have a hard time with workers' comp, right? And the intoxication one, believe it or not, gets people sometimes because Sometimes some of these Delta 8s and marijuanas and Delta 9s can stay in your blood for a period of time. And so even though it was 2 days ago, that may still show up in your blood. And every time you're injured on the job, you're going to undergo a drug test. That's the first thing they do, whether you are, at the clinic or at the hospital or wherever. They're going to do a drug test. And, if that comes back hot for something, it doesn't necessarily prohibit you from getting workers' comp. They still would have to prove that the intoxication is what led to your injury, right? So if you're a forklift driver and you had a BAC of 0.09 and you rear-ended something, chances are you're not going to get workers' comp. But if you had something in your blood and a shelf broke and something fell on your head, the intoxication had nothing to do with that. That was going to happen whether that was in your blood or not. So.
And do they tend to fight the workers' comp claims?
They do. And workers' comp is unusual because, you don't get to choose your own doctor. So you're going to go to their doctors, you're going to get the treatment that they prescribe, and you do it on their timeline, which tends to be a fair deal slower than, were you to go to the doctor under your own private health insurance. So it can be a little tricky, and there are lots of little rocks for them to hide under along the way. So it helps to have someone to help walk you through it.
Indeed it do. We've had callers that have been holding. We have a caller from Schuyler. I'm afraid I didn't get your first name. Are you still with us? Indeed it do.
Go ahead with your question.
We have a caller from Schuyler. I'm afraid I didn't get your first name. Are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay. Listen to the phone and not the TV.
What's your question?
Hello.
Yes,
Yeah.
What's your question?
Okay.
As William said, listen to your phone, not your TV.
Yes, I have Dish Network, and in my contract I had all the local stations. Well, they dropped one.
Okay, so what is the question? Can you get out of your contract?
Let's assume that's what it is. If they change the stations, does that void the contract?
I don't know if that would necessarily void the contract. You'd have to read through the contract. My guess is that Dish and other providers have some language in there that, if a channel fails to be provided due to some, contractual negotiations of their own between networks and this, that, and the other, that there would be some sort of grace period, or that, they provide every reasonable local channel that they could. They tend to put in some things there that are going to make it difficult for you to get out. But it would be worth taking a read and seeing. If the contract explicitly says we provide every local channel, and now they don't, that could be terms to get you out of the contract. I don't know that it would necessarily provide.
Yeah, I don't know that I could
damages.
find my contract, but it would. I assume it must be online. You should be able to read through it real quick.
Yeah, most of them will have a portal, where you log in to pay your bill and you can access your documents that way. And a lot of them now, are going to contain an arbitration clause. And, an arbitration clause is basically just a way for you to not be able to go to court, right? And so they sneak these into credit card contracts, anything you can think of, they sneak them in now. And it basically says that if you have a contract dispute, that you will go to arbitration in lieu of going to a court. So you go have some private lawyer hear your case instead of a judge or a jury.
Holly, I hope you'll hang in there with us. We got to take a break right now, but we'll be right back taking more of your phone calls.
is an advertising fee to this station.
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call. Your rights, your calls, live. Presented by the Tennessee Valley's award-winning personal injury and wrongful death law firm, Timberlake, League & Brooks. Featuring the knowledge and experience of Attorney Michael Timberlake, Attorney Will League, Attorney Heath Brooks, Attorney William Maservi. And hosted by broadcaster and family law attorney Sharon Doviet. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Hey, William Maservi is here taking your questions. It's Ask Us Anything night. Use 536-0077. You can text us or call us. But you're going to tell, you've been taking people to court? What do I hear here?
Yeah, so every year we host some local high school students as interns in the office for about a week. And so these are some students from Randolph High School and John Paul II High School. And Judge Frank Barger down in the Madison County Probate Court graciously hosted us. We learned a lot about adoption and mental health and all the good things that Judge Barger and our local probate court are doing, and had a big time.
Let me tell you about one more thing that Timberlake, League & Brooks is doing. Broadway Theater League has got a play, Mrs. Doubtfire, this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They provide free wheelchair service. So if you need a wheelchair to get to your seat from where you park your car, you just give them a call and they'll come get you, and all those expenses are taken care of by Timberlake, League & Brooks.
That's right, and you've been doing a little bit of travel, have you not?
Well, I have. It was something I wanted to do my entire life. So I went to Egypt.
Okay.
And and I had the cutest camel that could be, but
The name wasn't Sally, was it?
No, I'm afraid not, but it was great fun. This is part of the tour group there that I was with, and they sort of kept talking about how dangerous the roads in Cairo were. They would take a 2-lane street and turn it into 3 lanes, plus for a motorcycle. You can see that lady side saddle on a motorcycle with a baby in her. So anyway, but if you get hurt overseas, you do a lot of traveling. Mm-hmm. What's your advice?
You know, I would always start by talking to your local lawyer, because your local lawyer is going to be able to sort of navigate through and find you and land you with someone that will be able to help you overseas. Doesn't cost you any more to use your local lawyer, and that includes cruise ships. There's a whole cottage industry of folks who represent people injured on cruise ships. If that were to happen to you, I'd start with your local lawyer and let them get you to someone they trust and go from there.
Excellent. Now, we've had some nice people waiting for us. Let's go to Howie in Huntsville. I hope you're still there, Howie.
Sure am.
Oh, great. What's your question tonight?
Okay, I purchased a house at a sheriff's sale, and I rented it out to a tenant on a written month-to-month lease subject to the right of redemption. The former owner filed a suit against me to redeem it. There were some technical errors, and I lost anyways, and there was a judgment for redemption, but I have that on appeal. In the meantime, the former owner has filed an eviction against my tenant, which hasn't been heard yet. My tenant answered it, and there's going to be a trial in another week or so. But in the meantime, this other party came over to the house while my tenant was visiting some relatives and started to cart their stuff out of the house and throw it out in the street. And we called the police and complained that, hey, this is self-help eviction. There's no court. Well, they claimed that they had a court order for eviction, even though I know they couldn't have one because haven't had the eviction trial yet. And the police allowed them to do it, and they told us to leave. And I wanted to find out whether the police. In fact, we went to got the police report on it, and I went with my tenant, and we went to the front desk at Wheeler Avenue and tried to file a criminal report because they did a self-help eviction, and they refused to let us file a criminal report. They said it was a civil matter, and I want to find out if that's true, and if it's not true, if it really is criminal, how do we go about getting a criminal case the police don't want to handle it.
I think that the police are likely correct there, that it is a civil matter, and you can't have a civil action for a wrongful eviction. And it has some pretty steep penalties attached to it. Now, that wrongful eviction action wouldn't belong to you, but it would belong to your tenant. You know, and that the caveat to that is that the court would have to find that that was a valid lease agreement that you had with him. And you know, the argument on the other side of that's going to be, well, it couldn't have been a valid lease agreement because I am the property owner, not this other individual who entered into the lease agreement with the tenant. And so it's going to be a little bit tricky, but you know, there's some potential there for what is a wrongful eviction. You have to go through the courts and get an order to evict somebody. And like you said, you can't just go in and start cleaning out and putting people's stuff on the street. And if you do, the law gives some pretty steep penalties for that. So if I were your tenant, I would consult with you know, an eviction lawyer and you know, learn a little bit more about your potential there for a wrongful eviction action.
That is amazing. I can't imagine going through something like that.
Yeah.
Let's go to Ken in Huntsville. Ken, what's on your mind tonight? You with us, Ken?
No, maybe
Maybe he hung up on it.
Yeah.
Well, give us a call back if you feel like it. Listen, you speak Spanish, have Spanish-speaking clients.
I do.
Talk to me a little about what that's like.
You know, I think it's tricky for people who speak a foreign language that reside in this country. And even if they have pretty decent English language skills, a lot of times that's not going to put them in a position where they're able to read necessarily legal documents and fully understand them. And really, if you think about it, many documents as a native English speaker, you're going to take to a lawyer and read with your lawyer to make sure you understand exactly what it is you're doing, right? And so I think there's just a little bit more of that. And there can be some cultural differences that can be difficult to overcome with regards to, you know, how things function from country to country. And so, for example, in many Central and South American countries, a notary is sort of a quasi-lawyer. Whereas here in America, a notary is not, any form or fashion, a quasi-lawyer, right? And so there can just be some differences culturally there that I think folks run into. But, you know, the reality is everyone needs legal representation. Yeah. And folks need to be able to hear and understand it from someone that speaks their language.
Well, and in a language that they clearly understand,
Sure.
has some confidence that it's going on. Barbara from Scottsboro, you're up next. Do you have a question? I'm not batting too well tonight. Barbara, are you with us? Talk to me a little about, the law doesn't seem to change very much. I mean, basically, probably what you were taught in law school, the basics are still true.
I think the basic concepts and theories remain true, but things change all the time. And you know, the reality is they call it practicing law because the law is constantly changing based on different opinions from different judges. And so, you know, even just the laws around Alabama premises liability and when a property owner is responsible for someone else's getting injured on their property,
Right.
that changes with each court opinion that comes down, you know. And so all those have to be taken into consideration to get a good understanding of what the law really is.
Well, we're going to take a little break here. If you have a question, you give us a call, or you can always email lawcall@waaytv.com. Back in a minute.
which pays an advertising fee to this station.
If you have more questions, you can reach William Meservey at Timberlake League and Brooks here in Huntsville, 256-536-0770 or law-injury.com.
And we're missing our illustrious Sharon Doviat tonight, but if you have any questions about family law, adoptions, guardianship, you can get in touch with her, 256-539-7337, www.sharonfamilylaw.com.
And she'll be back next week, I'm happy to say. And Barbara is with us. Barbara, what's your question? Barbara from Scottsboro.
Yes, I was in a car accident, and I've been in a settlement for like a year now. And I was just wondering, why is it taking so long? They say the holdup is my medical stuff that can't get settled.
Sure. So, you know, the process, if you're in a motor vehicle collision and you have a lawyer, the first thing we're going to do is wait for you to get better, right? Because you only get a chance to resolve your case one time, and you want to make sure that you get everything you're entitled to. And so if you were to try to run out and do it quickly and then need a neck surgery later, you might be in a situation where you can't recover for that neck surgery. So we want to get you to what the doctors call maximum medical improvement. And sometimes that takes folks a couple weeks, sometimes it takes them a couple months, sometimes it can take them a year. But once you reach that maximum medical improvement, then we're going to be ordering all of your medical records and bills. And that sounds a lot easier than it is. You know, you have to deal with sometimes many different providers. A lot of times they use third parties to provide their medical records, so you're dealing with some company in another state. A lot of times you need itemized bills for the insurance company that show the diagnostic codes that were billed. You need itemizations from health insurance companies. All of these things that you've got to get in place in order to resolve out your case. And so, you know, sometimes, unfortunately, the provider loses a medical records request, and now you're sending a second one. But, you know, it's sort of the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but it's not a fast process. And we try to make it as quick as we can.
Well, but I've heard you guys say if you settle too early, you're settling for too little.
Yeah. And that's the reason. There are folks out there who are in a rush to, you know, get their case in. And usually we're arguing with the insurance company either about liability or about damages. And a lot of times it's not a question of do they owe you money, it's a question of how much money do they owe you. Okay. And, you know, if they were in the habit of rolling over and paying policy limits, I wouldn't have a job, or it wouldn't be this
You're
one.
probably right. Listen, join Timberlake League and Brooks every Monday. That's Monday on WAAY 31 during the midday news. Thank you very much for joining us. Again, Sharon Doviat will be back next week.
Have a great night.